Hey everyone, we are back to make more progress on Damon Claw in Construct 2, and with me as always is Corey. Say hi, Corey.
Hey, how's it going?
And there's a few things we're going to take care of today, and there's a few things that I already got done ahead of time in preparation for this video. And one of the features that we just started working on was I got in the most basic pause functionality working. And I wanted to do that ahead of time because it's actually a bit more confusing for this particular game than it otherwise needs to be, because as you know, for those who have watched our previous videos, Construct has a built-in feature to affect the time scale of either the entire game or a particular object. So you could simply, if you are not otherwise ever affecting time scale of the game, pausing as simple as saying, if the user presses a certain key, then set timescale to 0, and then if they press that key again, then you set timescale back to 1, and it's that simple. The problem is, in Damon Claw, in a couple of occasions, we're setting timescale to 0 for the game, but then back to 1 for specific objects so that the rest of the world pauses while the player plays an animation. So because of that, it becomes much, much trickier to keep track of, well, if you pause it in this moment, you can't just unpause everything again when the person presses pause again. You have to keep track of what is unpaused in any given situation, so that when the player pauses it and then unpauses again, only those particular things, usually the player, for example, unpause. They ended up using a variable, so I'll go into gameplay events and show you how that works. So I created a new variable called
Residuum? No, I'm kidding.
No, that's an old one. I still don't remember what that means or what that's for, but I should do a search at some point and figure that out. But all right, so as you can see, we have a variable called paused. This is going to keep track of what type of paused or the state of pausedness of the game. But then also in the player input, there used to be another variable just called pause, so it was only one letter different, which was very confusing when I was trying to code. So I renamed this. So what this one was for detecting whether or not a pause button or key was pressed or not. So I renamed this so that it would actually be easy to keep track of, because I kept confusing myself between pause and paused. I added everything that was necessary for the keyboard and made the spacebar pause and unpause. So I just made sure it sets that variable pause press to 1 when you're pressing a pause key or button, and then back to 0 if you are not. And I did the same thing for the gamepad. And then it was a matter of going into the gameplay events. And you'll see I created a group right up front to make things easy, and just added all the events that would be required to pause and unpause. And you can see, because of the complexity, because we wanted that little extra nice cinematic effect of pausing time in some situations, it's a lot more complicated. Like, for most games, this could be 2 events, basically. And then, so this first one just says set pause to 0. That just makes sure that when you start a level, it knows it's not paused, basically. And then, so we have, if the player pressed the pause button, and the current state of paused is 0, meaning not paused at all, then we do that trick where we set paused to 2, so that way these events can't loop through each other. Like, if this one was true, any of these other ones can't be true, because pause pressed is no longer 1.
Right.
Like, immediately it's definitely 2, so that means the player has to release the pause button and then press it again in order for anything to change. And then we have, so if paused is 0, which just means totally normal, vanilla, you should just do a regular pause, set everything's timescale to 0, then we set pause to 1, which is standard paused, and then we just set the timescale to 0, we pause the music, we pause the sounds, we deactivate player controls group so that while it's paused you can't actually trigger the special moves like the flaming uppercut or anything like that. And then we also sort of doubly make sure we're setting the player's box's timescale to 0, and the spriter object for the hero setting his spriter object to 0 as well, just to make sure that any of the events that specifically set their timescale to 1 can't somehow override this the very instant you're pausing it.
Right.
And so that works just fine for regular situations. But then we had to take care of those edge cases. So then, of course, what I did was I have the thing that pauses it into that particular mode, and then how to unpause it from that particular mode. So you see we set pause to 1. So now we have how do you unpause. If paused is 1, which is sort of vanilla paused, and the player pressed pause again, then you have set pause press to 2. So now it can't, again, you have to let go and press pause again for anything to change. And we set paused back to total vanilla 0, not paused at all. We set the timescale to 1 for the game itself and the player box and spriter object. We reactivate the controls and we resume the music and the sound effects. So that's the nice, easy stuff. But the reason I did this off video was it can be extremely confusing, just sort of messing around going, wait, what state was paused, state 2 versus, you see here I'm like doing crazy stuff like 99. And the reason I did that is in my brain it was easier to do a big jump for a very different kind of state. Like this is a special state where when you unpause it, you need to be careful and not unpause everything because the game itself is already in a state of timescale zeros. So I want to keep it that way so you could see in this case. So we have paused equals 2. That's a state of the game itself is paused, but the player and stuff is not because he's in the middle of doing his I got the gauntlet or the air bash animation, those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. So you could see when he's in that state now, I'll show you the event for that later. In that event now, I set paused to 2, right? Oh. So that's like special paused mode where the game is timescale 0, so it's sort of paused, but it's going to unpause itself when the player is done playing the animation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So we set pause to 99 just because I'm crazy. And then we set timescale to 0. Same thing, pause the music, pause the sound, deactivate player controls. So all of this is the same, but the big important difference is we're setting paused now to 99 so that it knows when you unpause it from pause 99, we're not unpausing the actual game's timescale. We're keeping that at 0 because automatically when this animation of I got the gauntlet or whatever it's called, when that's done playing, it's going to unpause it.
Right.
Okay? And then we have a paused 3. There are 2 variations, 2 modes. When you get the gauntlet, if you remember, we added a little thing to that event that makes it wait until the player is falling back down to a certain vertical position so he's not half off the screen to make sure you can see the animation. So in that case, the player is still falling. And because he's still moving in that way, yet the rest of the game is paused, we had sort of a special edge case. So in those given circumstances, we're setting paused to 2 or 3 in those other events, and then these are handling what happens when you pause it there. And you can see here, instead of setting pause to 99, for pause 2, it sets it to 99 when you pause it. For pause 3, it sets it to 999 when you pause it. And that helps me keep track of the difference. What should we do differently here? And we're setting pause back to 3. I don't see another difference. So it could even be...
Yeah, if some of these do the same...
Here. Yeah. Here.
Have the same code in them.
Right.
I mean, I suppose you could consolidate
exactly.
by saying if pause is greater than or something like that. But it looks like there are some little differences.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah.
So this means that we needed the player to still be moving vertically. That's the difference right here. Mm-hmm. That's so the rest of the game is still paused, but we need him to be able to fall back to the adequately low Y position so that he could go into pause 2 mode and play the I got the gauntlet animation. Meanwhile, the game is still timescale 0. That's why it was complicated, and this took way more time than it should have for me to figure out what the different modes were and I didn't like it. Just would have made for a very bumbling kind of dead end video. So I just figured I'd get it done ahead of time. But hopefully, I've explained basically what's going on. It's if you have
there's already 20 hours of bumbling. So
yeah, exactly. But it would have been like 40. It would have been easily 40. So we do what we can. And to make matters worse, which won't be that bad at all compared to what I had to do here to get it working in general, eventually we're going to want to add a pause menu so that a few options appear when you pause that say, do you want to restart the level? Do you want to go back to the main menu? That sort of thing.
Right.
So that'll be for another video, though. So to finish covering the whole paused thing, all I need to do now is go into events and we'll just do a search for paused. Okay. And then now we can see the different events where now we're setting that. So you could see air bash requirement. So this is when he's doing the air bash in a way that he has the flame magic power enough to do the special air bash. Mm-hmm. So that pauses the game for a second, but not the player, obviously. So that's when we're setting pause to 2. Right. And then you could see we're setting pause back to 0 when air bashes. Anytime that the game unpauses from the air bash animation or the I got the gauntlet animation, we need to make sure we're setting that value back to make sure the game knows what mode of pausedness is it in. Is it not paused at all, totally vanilla, where you can pause just everything, or is it in one of those special modes? So, and here it is, the important one, where you grab the power-up that gives you the gauntlet right here. This is where we set pause to 3 initially. And then once he reaches that lowest possible vertical position so that it should play the animation, it plays the animation, but now we do not want its vertical movement to continue while the rest of the game is paused. So we're setting pause to 2 instead of 3. And then when he's totally done playing that animation, then he's going to set it back to 0, which here it is, get gauntlets finished, set paused to 0. That means you're back to totally normal, vanilla, not paused at all. You should pause everything if the player presses the pause button. And I might as well actually run the level to show pause working. And now that I'm actually sharing screen and we're recording a video, we'll find all kinds of bugs to the pause that I haven't found yet.
Of course, yeah.
But the point is, we can also show, while I'm doing this, we can also theoretically... Oh, and I should say, we got in some music that hopefully isn't too loud while I'm recording this. I think it will be fine. I did turn it down pretty low. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so... I can jump, I can pause, so that's regular pause. And right now, that number in the upper left of the screen, the black number, that is keeping track of the paused mode, so to speak, or paused state, so that I could work through all these edge cases and see basically what I was doing wrong. But you can see this works, and this will allow us to get screen grabs much easier once I hide the debugging number again. Mm-hmm. But anyway... The other point is, I will, when I get the power-up, I'll pause it. That's one of the trickiest pause states. Okay, so you can see it went to 99. Mm-hmm. And it went to 2 for a second. 99, and then back to normal. And it didn't crash, but now you can see I'll pause it to make sure people can hear me well, since it pauses the music too. Alright, I had to pause there for a technical issue. For some reason, in a combination of me recording and sharing screen and audio with Corey, when the game is playing audio, it would basically keep cutting out my voice on Corey's end. So I had to go into Volume Mixer and mute Chrome browser. So you're not going to be able to hear the music or sound effects. You'll have to take our word for it that the music is all in and playing. But for now, let's get back to the game. And you can see, I grabbed a couple of power-ups, and you can see now, I'll pause it again, the player has the particle effect on his gauntlet. And the reason we added that is, if you saw in a previous video, Corey and I were discussing what to do to back up the fact that we have this cool-off meter up here at the top center, And the whole idea of that was it would stop you from constantly spamming your most powerful magic moves and be able to basically keep yourself frozen up in the air by continually doing the air bash with the firepower. So what we came up with was there's the cool-off meter itself, and you have to wait for it to fill back up to a certain degree before you can do any of your magic moves again. But that really wasn't enough. And originally we were planning for there to be a sound effect, kind of a bzzz kind of sound, when you try to do one of your magic moves and you don't have enough magical energy. And I actually implemented that into the game and then play tested it, and it was just awful. It made that sound so frequently that no matter how nice of a sound you picked, it was obnoxious. Or you could try to make the sound really subtle so it wasn't obnoxious, but then it defeated the purpose. It was so quiet and pleasant that it really wasn't reinforcing that something bad was happening, or at least the thing good you wanted to happen wasn't happening.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I came up with the idea of the cool-off meter and making it so your gauntlet basically has to recharge enough magical energy for the thing to happen. And then what happens is, if you spam it and you don't have enough power, you'll see that the meter flashes red right up there to let you know that you tried to do the move, but there wasn't enough energy. But that kind of happens after the fact and is very easy to miss if you're playing the game and paying attention to the player and enemies and not the HUD. So
Right.
the solution was, okay, we'll make it so that there's this cool magical effect that will match the magic of each level, in this case fire, and it will only appear once the gauntlet has built up enough energy, and then will continue to grow as you go to 100% filled meter. And that's another really clear visual indicator that, okay, now I have the magical energy required for any of the magic moves to be the magical version.
Mm-hmm.
So we got that in, but there's another reason for that effect to be there, and that is something that a sort of change to the gameplay design for the power-ups that we added after a conversation where Corey had a great idea after the play video of us playing Altered Beast. Eventually, we did a private Patreon video of us having a design scrum to figure out what we were going to do. Oh, that's what it was. In Altered Beast, after you get enough of those, they're called spirit balls, to actually transform into the werewolf or whatever monster you're going to be in that level. What are they called? The spirit balls. Everyone you collect, it doesn't do anything. It gives you points, but for a game like that, points are pretty useless. So it was a conversation of, well, what do we do in Demon Claw? Because that's kind of anticlimactic or just a little lame that you collect more of this magical energy and now it's not doing anything. So we decided that we would now divide your power you get with the gauntlet into two different modes, that the most powerful mode would behave a little differently and look a little different. So what we did is it acts as it used to up until you get, I think, the fourth power level. I can't remember if it's the third or fourth, but we can easily change that. But the point is so that those are all the same. But then there's a gap where I sort of turned off, let's call it the fourth power level. So then it would skip all the way to the fifth, which is very clearly more powerful. So there's a bigger gap between the two modes. But then more importantly, when you get this new, more powerful mode, the whole character, which I'll actually play again and hopefully get to that power level so you can see, that the character will basically get this flaming energy cloak entirely enveloping him. And that particle effect, there it is. The particle effect is drastically bigger on his gauntlet, and the character is now blinking between his normal appearance and this glowing, flaming appearance. And that lets the player know that they've just achieved the most powerful form. And then the other thing we decided we're going to do is that this most powerful mode is harder to keep, so you can't get so overpowered that the rest of the level becomes a walkthrough. You have to worry about losing this power. So just before this mode, you never lose any of this power if you get damaged. But when you get this really powerful energy cloak mode, one hit from anything will not take hit points away from you. It won't take away a hit point block, but you will lose the cloak in the most powerful mode. So now you're always trying to keep it by not getting hit, and then also build up, earn that magical energy back so you can get the cloak back as soon as possible if you do lose it, or when you do lose it.
Right.
So that's what we've been working on. And obviously there were several things I needed to do to get it working to the state it is. It's not finished yet. There's a few things we're going to add during this video, but that's what we have working so far, is that the character, one, that the particle effect exists, and I'll explain this in more detail shortly, and that it stays on the player. And then the player has this alternate mode, which is a character map, and then I'm blinking back and forth between that when the character is in this mode. But right now, unlike what we have planned, if you get hit, you do not lose that mode.
Right.
So we're going to make that work in a moment. So I will close out. Oh, go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, I was going to say I like how this adds a extra sort of strategy element, but also a bit of frantic gameplay. Like if you get supercharged, you want to avoid getting hit. Kind of a rage mode, I guess you could say.
Yeah, really. There's still something to lose. You're not just OP and kind of breezing through the end of the level. And there we go. That was a good test case for pause working and stuff. But yeah, it really does keep it much more. It forces you to keep being strategic and to worry more even till the end. You're still obviously more powerful, so it's less likely you're going to die or have trouble with the enemies. But you want to hold on to that power so you have it right when you start your boss battle and stuff. So it did add a lot. It also added that wow factor. Another thing that I haven't mentioned yet is we're also, just like Altered Beast, which was something you suggested, or another thing you suggested, is that we're going to change the music out to some more dramatic music when you get that power up. And then if you lose this power, then it'll go back to the normal music.
Right.
So it really will make the game more exciting and dramatic, and keep the player more engaged at all times, which is all fantastic. But anyway, so let's close out of the game and go into the actual layouts and show what I did to get all of the stuff working to the point it is currently working. And one of those things is here it is, the particle effect. So I call it Gaunt Power, which should be Gauntlet Power. And you can see there is just animations. I wonder if I can actually reorder these, or if it's going to make it crash, or it just doesn't work. Oh, nice. Just for the sake of being organized.
All right.
It's because I didn't create the animations in the right order that they're not in the right order. But there we go. Okay. So as you can see, it's just a number and then flame, which if you recall, capital FLAME, that is, we have a variable called power type that we set at the beginning of each level to remind the game code if you have the fire power or anything like that. And we use that variable also when we're changing the motion blur sprite. Yeah, so you can see we do the same thing here. We have one flame default, one flame airbash. So we're using that text variable to use code to say, okay, change this thing to this animation. And we're going to be doing the same thing with this Gauntlet Power particle effect. So it's going to say, set its animation to the number of the power level, basically, plus the text string for what power type. So eventually we'll have like Thunder or all those other power types. We'll have 9 animations for each, which is the different sizes of that particular magical power. That's how that works, and it doesn't need any other special settings or behaviors. It's just a bunch of looping animations at different sizes. And then so now we can... Oh, and the other thing, I obviously needed to go into the Spriter project for the hero himself and go into every animation and every keyframe. You'll see now there is an action point called power. So I needed that power action point to be at every frame of every animation, and then so now we can start looking at actual events to see how I got this stuff working. So gameplay events. All right, so let's just search for Gaunt and see what comes up. So you can see I created a group of events called Gauntlet Power Particle. So what we're going to do is set if power level is 0, which is the player hasn't gotten any power yet, we know for sure that the gauntlet power should definitely be invisible. That's the actual particle effect. And then if power level is greater than 0, but the player does not have enough magic energy, that's the cool-off meter, actually, right? So the cool-off meter is not high enough to be able to do any magic move. It stays invisible. But then once the power level is greater than 0 and the cool-off meter is charged up enough to be able to at least do any of the magic moves, then we make it visible. And then every tick we are setting the position of the particle effect to the position of that point called power that I added into the Spriter file.
Mm-hmm.
So basically it's that simple as far as having it always be at the right spot on the player. And the trickier part is setting its animation. So I made this formula here, which is a little tricky, which is we're setting the animation to, and then we're doing str, which is string.
Mm-hmm.
And then int is integer, because we don't want the math to make it like 2.4, because there's not going to be an animation called 2.4 flame.
Right.
So int keeps it rounded to the nearest whole number.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the magic meter, which is the value of the cool-off meter, and then we divide it by 10 because its value ranges from 0 to 100. So
Right.
if we divide it by 10, then we get it to a nice even 10. But then we also divide that by 2 because we don't want the gauntlet to go through the full range of animation sizes for that particle effect. Like, let's say you're at the lowest power.
Mm-hmm.
Even when the cool-off meter gets to 100%, we don't want it to be huge. We want it to stay pretty small. So it only goes through 1 or 2 animations. And this is basically the same thing for each power level you have. Like when you're at power level 1, it'll start at animation 1, and then it might get to 2 or 3 at the most powerful. But then if you're at power level 2, the smallest it'll ever be, as soon as it appears, it'll be animation 2, and then it'll get bigger. So basically it allows it to get a little bit bigger once you're fully charged with the more power levels you get by grabbing those energy orbs.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that rambling makes sense. And then so we have this whole thing, which is math that gives us a whole number between 1 and basically 9. So this turns it into a string. So we're going to end up with a number 1 through 9 or whatever. And then the and, or I guess it's an ampersand symbol, that means plus. So it's the string of that number and then the string from that variable string power type, which in this case is flame for this first level.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we get the animation name. So it's always going to be updating based on your power level, the level you're in and what power type it is, and how full the cool-off meter are. Basically, it starts small and gets bigger and bigger. That's what she said. And then, let's see, so what else is going on? And at the start of the level, we don't have it in the layout. Like, we're not going to add this little sprite in the layout for every level. So just like the hero spriter, just like all of this stuff is only in the spriter layout at first,
Right.
we need to create it at the start of the level. So that's what that event did right here. Create that object so that we have it and can manipulate it and everything. And then what else? Somewhere there should be, we'll actually just look at, what was it called? Fire Cloak or Flame? Yeah, Fire Cloak.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at Fire Cloak. All right. So you can see I created another global variable called, or actually it's not a global variable, it's a variable in the hero spriter object called cloak toggle. And if power level equals 4, so the 4th power level is when you get the energy cloak, every so many fractions of a second, it's going to set that new variable cloak toggle to itself times -1. So
Alright.
if you multiply 1 by -1, you get -1. But then once it's -1, if you multiply -1 by -1, you get +1. So this was just a relatively easy way to get it to every few fractions of a second toggle that value between -1, +1, and so on. Toggle. So that's doing that. It's alternating it. And then if cloak toggle is 1, then we are appending the character map fire cloak. And actually, I'm going to have to change this eventually to not use the word fire. It should grab, I'll actually fix that right now. Instead of fire cloak, it should be ampersand and then that value, which is a global value in this case, power type.
Right.
So that's going to be fire cloak. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. So, and then because this is in the gameplay events, which is for all levels, so obviously I can't have it switch it to fire cloak in the other levels when you have thunder magic or all the other different types of magic. So, okay, that fixed that. And then if it's -1, we remove all character maps and then reappend the power type character map, which is, in this case, fire, right? So again, it's using that same variable. And that was the pre-existing character map that you had created, which, as you could see, is going to give it... Oh, that's interesting. Oh, yeah, that's right. Fire does not exist. So
Yeah, because it's
the default thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we could do it if we need to and create an empty character map, just so it has the name. But that shouldn't be necessary. If it tries to append a character map that doesn't exist, it just does nothing. So it should be fine in level 0. But we can test it, and obviously if it crashes, we know why.
Right.
You know what I mean? It'll mean that you can't assign a character map that does not exist. And then the simple solution will be to create that character map, even if it's totally empty and does nothing. All right, but that's what makes the player actually flash back and forth between the two character maps, which gives him that blinking fire cloak effect. And we already saw what makes the particle effect on the gauntlet appear. And so that's where we are so far with the functionality. All right, so let's make this hit point stuff work. And in anticipation of that, just as I mentioned, I had the two variables, pause and paused, that were causing me confusion. There was also, like every character, like the enemies and the player, they all have a variable called hit points. So I renamed the global variable for the player's hit points to be P hit points. So now if I do a search for P hit points, then I don't have to worry about getting a ton of events that are for other creatures.
Right.
And the reason we need this is we need to figure out what to do every time the player gets hit. Because right now, if the player gets hit, not only do we play the animation hit, which is fine, we don't want to change that, but we also subtract 1 from hit points. And we can't do that anymore in the situations where he has power level 4. So one thing that we could do that might be the easiest thing to do, where we won't have to go in and edit every last one of these events where the player's getting hit, what we could do is just add one event. Do you remember how we can call, you see how we call update health, this function here? What we could do is we could create another function and call that function every time he gets hit, and in that function say, does he have power level 4? If so, bring him down to power level 3, and also give him back 1 hit point.
Right.
And because we'll do that function call before the call to the update health, and immediately after reducing a hit point, it will update the same frame. So the player won't see the hit point disappear for a split second and then reappear. It should be the perfect crime. It should be seamless. So let's try that. So I'm going to copy and paste this here. And I'm going to change this to be D-cloak check. And I'm going to copy that into the clipboard so I don't have to worry about a typo when I create the actual function. And then that all should be fine since we're doing that first and then this. So I can just go ahead and paste. Why didn't that paste? Oh, that's right. Yeah, all right. Well, anyway, I'll have to copy the name again later. Let's see. So this is every event. We don't need it in die. We only need it when we subtract 1 from hit points. Here's another one. I think it's the only other one, except for maybe there's some specifically in level 1 events. So let's check there. So yes, so here he is taking a point of damage from Birdman, Birdman Alt, and so on. So let's get those in there. Alright, and that one I can get rid of. That's when I had to replace the sub-boss character. So now that that is done, we're going to double-click on this, get this back. And that's what it is, clipboard, right? The memory when you copy and paste.
Oh, yeah.
I had a brain fart on the word clipboard earlier. Alright, so decloak check. Alright, so now let's go back into gameplay events, and we're going to add an event that says on function. Oh, actually I think it uses, yep, this. So on function decloak check, we're going to check at another condition, and it's going to be power level. So we're going to compare variable, and it's going to be power level equals 4.
Okay.
Then we are going to subtract 1 from power level. So subtract from power level, and we're going to add 1 back in to player hit points. Did I? Oh, I didn't change it. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's because I copied and pasted it. I can't switch it to add, so I have to do it this way. So what I could do if I want to be really sloppy is, but I won't do. I'll show you after I do this the right way. But hit points is what I want, right? P hit points, adding 1. Okay. So what I could have done if I wanted to be really lazy and sloppy is I could have subtracted -1, because if you subtract -1, you're adding 1.
Right.
But that just looks really counterintuitive, and yeah, it's just very sloppy. Like, you're going to make it way harder for yourself to debug things if you're that lazy and sloppy, because the things aren't going to at a glance make logical sense.
Right.
But anyway, so let me save progress. All right, so do we need to do anything else in this decloak? We are bringing down the power level, and we are subtracting 1. So subtracting 1 from power level and adding 1 to hit points back. So that's all great. The problem is, right now there's no situation that turns off that character map. There we go.
Right.
All right, hero. So we're going to find the section for character maps. I think there's a section specifically. Yeah, character maps. So we're going to remove all character maps, and then we need to bring back that power level one. Right. So hero, and then we're going to append. There we go, character maps. Append character map, and that one is simply the name, the text from that power type. Here we go.
Right.
So we append that, and then the other thing we need to do is we might as well set that toggle value to -1. This should not be necessary, but just to be careful, to be extra safe, basically. That thing that we were toggling, where if it was 1, it would turn on the character map and off it would not. Mm-hmm. We're just going to set that value back to -1. And it should only ever be 1 or -1. Let me look up toggle again to make sure. So, yeah, when it's -1, yeah, it's back to normal.
I mean, since you're doing the same code in both places, do you think just having the set cloak toggle is all you need there instead of the removing character maps and Because you're doing it up there.
Well, this does it only every fractions of a second and only if your power level is 0.
Right.
And then this only does it if you've literally just got hit and lost the power level.
Right. Okay,
so
it makes sense.
These two things should cover all circumstances. The only circumstance, actually, come to think of it, that this does not cover... Oh, but it doesn't need to, because you can't die while you're cloaked, because any one thing always only takes 1 hit, 1 point of damage. So, yeah, this should all be good. So let's actually run it and see if this is working. And, it's going to take me a minute to get up to power level 4, but after this time, especially if it doesn't work, or even if it does, I'll alter that event that at the start of the level sets the power level to 0, and I'll make it start me at power level 3, so I only need to collect 1 to get up there, and that'll save us some time on the testing. All right, there's the first one. Oh, I didn't program that part yet where, in the case of those sub-bosses with the small boomerangs, I didn't program it yet so that the boomerang disappears after you've beaten both of the sub-bosses and scrolling turns back on. So I'll need to make a note to do that. But anyway, I think we're about to get the cloak, and then all I'll have to do is get hit either accidentally or on purpose to see if our code works. All right, no, one more. Okay. Ah! Here we go. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, here it comes. Uh-oh. Maybe there's one more to go, but I think that should have been it. Oh, that's what I should do. I should set the debug text to the power level. That way I know for sure. Yeah, no, definitely something.
It seems like it's...
I'm going to try for one more, but I'm pretty certain that should have been
it. Seems like it's setting. It's preventing it from going to the top power level.
Yep. All right, so yeah, it's not working. So let's start with doing the level 1, no, not boss, level 1 event. So we're going to look for text. And we are going to set the text to string. And then we're going to simply retrieve power level. So now we'll know for sure. And then we're going to go back to gameplay events, and we're going to try to find what our logical error was. And so let's look for character map. Is it char map or something different? Nope, char. Probably if I just look for map. There we go. Something is turning it off so that it never takes effect. You know what it might be? Actually,
was it that you made the third? Because power level 1 is no fire powers, right? Is that the way it is, or is it 0?
I just found the actual issue.
Oh, okay.
Look, flame. Flame is the power type for level 1.
Right.
And I put, for the character map, fire. That's what's causing the problem. Yeah, definitely. And let me just double check that. That would mean that I should be doing it properly and calling it flame in the particle effect. So in the gauntlet particle effect and in the other thing. So if we look here, flame, flame, flame. So yeah, that was just sloppiness on my part. And I didn't discover that sloppiness before because I had it hard-coded, remember, to set it based on just the hard-coded fire when it should have been flame. But it says fire right now in the spriter object, so it worked. So all I need to do is double-click this, rename this to flame. Fame, not fame. Flame cloak, okay. And then file, save project as, make sure it gets saved as SCML, and then save project as, make sure it gets saved as SCON, And then we go into the spriter layout and drag that back in. Yes, and choose spriter events. Okay. Okay. And now I just need to go into the event sheet for the spriter frame. You're secretly hoping right now that I forget to switch back to level 1 before I run the game again, aren't you? So that we can have our old friend, the spriter layout running.
Yes.
All right, let's see. All right, so that should have fixed it, but I'm going to remember to switch back. Sorry, everyone. And theoretically now it should be fixed. Oh, there's one other thing I did not do yet that I was supposed to do, just to make testing easier and to not waste time, which is find that event at start of layout somewhere in here. Oh, it's in level 1 events. Is it? Oh, good, this is level 1 events. Set power level to 0. We're going to set power level to 3. So now we only need, theoretically, to collect one of those to get the cloak. Yep, 3. Excellent. All right. And I've got my flame power right off the bat. Got distracted by that stupid thing up in the corner there. All right, here we go. Oh, no, one more. There we go. And do we have cloak? Yes, cloak is back. And take hit, and I lose the cloak. Fantastic.
Nice.
So there's a few things that we want to do to add to this behavior. And let's get that cloak back. Awesome. One thing I do want to do, I want to make a note of this. When you finally do get the 4th cloak, not only should the music change, but I think that we should bring back the animation and the momentary pause. Like that Get Gauntlet animation, I think it should happen again for you to get the cloak, and maybe do a special effect besides that, like around the character or something.
Right. Or I mean, he'll already have the gauntlet. Maybe it's the same pose, but it's
exactly
powering up higher or something.
Exactly, something like that. Something make the cloak appear while the screen is paused. Make him scream like he's turning into a werewolf. I'm kidding about that part. And then it starts back up with the new music and stuff. I think that'll be cooler. But I don't think we'll do that in this video. I think the next thing to do is something that you had mentioned before, and that's the idea of maybe when you have this most powerful cloak power, that the cool-off meter is always full.
Right.
And I was thinking about that, and I think what I want to try first is actually just make it so that the meter fills in like 2 or 3 times as fast. Because my thinking is, not only will, for all intents and purposes, as far as gameplay is concerned, it'll be identical, because you can't spam your magic so much that you wouldn't always immediately be able to use it again. That's my thinking, if it fills back up really fast. But not only that, because we have that particle effect now that gets bigger as the meter recharges, it's a nice visual effect that we already have sort of for free. And if we make the cool-off meter always at 100%, we'll never get that nice little additional effect of it growing back after you use it. Right. Even though it'll just be super fast. So I think that's what I want to do next.
Do you think that once he's got the full power and loses it, that we should drop the meter down to 0, so you kind of have to rebuild that magic a little bit?
That's a cool idea. I like that. Yeah, we should definitely try it. It's certainly not going to affect much in gameplay, because you will have just gotten hit when you lose the cloak, so you'll be invulnerable and you won't be able to do anything for that second anyway. And by the time all that is done, your meter will have largely grown back. So,
yeah, it's almost like it ties in the whole visual of
and
like he's fully magic powered, so the magic is what's absorbing the blow, and you don't lose life, but you lose your meter.
Yeah, so, I really like that added touch, and it should be very easy to add to that function that we just created. So great idea. I love those little extra touches, a bit of polish there. Gameplay events. Is it still in the... No, it's not. All right, so what was that called? What was that function called? D-gauntlet, I think?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Oh, no, it's not. Or am I... Oh, no, I'm in... I just can't remember what it's called. Is it all the way at the bottom? That'll make it easy. Yeah, okay, decloak.
Decloak.
Check, decloak. Okay. So all we have to do right here is set the variable. I don't remember what the variable is, so it might take a second to find. Oh yeah, magic meter. We're just setting that to 0. And theoretically, that's all we needed to do. So let's play again.
Cool.
And now I don't have to play through a quarter of the level to build up that power. I start at 3. So very handy for testing. There we go.
Awesome.
All right, got the cloak, and let's get hit. Yep, cloak went to 0. That was great.
Nice.
Oh, and it does definitely have an effect on gameplay. You saw there. After
Yeah.
I was done, I did the regular drop kick. So it's I like it. All right.
Yeah, that way, like, there is some sort of detriment to getting hit with that full power.
Yeah, quite a bit now. Not only do you
Risk
lose
reward.
that full power, but you... Oh, that's the thing I didn't really pay close attention to that I need to. I've got the cloak. Do I... Yep, yeah, I don't take the hit... I don't lose the hit point. So, and there's no weird, like, 1 frame where it blinks away and comes back.
Right.
So it was indeed the perfect time. All right, so that's fantastic. We got that working. So the next thing is let's add the event that makes the meter grow back twice as fast if you're at power level 4. And let's try twice as fast at first and see how it feels. All right?
Okay.
All right, so for that, we just go back into gameplay events. And we're going to look for magic... Is it magic meter? All right. And then we're just going to look for the thing that adds to it.
Right.
So it should be like every so many fractions of a second. That should be...
I think it was right up there, wasn't it? If you go
Probably.
every 0.01 seconds. That's it, right?
oh, here we go. Yes, that is...
Yeah, because we're setting the width there
Yep.
and everything. Yeah.
Yep, exactly right. So all we have to do, we can actually just add to this. So we can add blank sub-event. And then in here, we could do compare variable power level. Is it equal to 4?
Mhm.
And then we could be sloppy and just make it do this math again. But
Right.
so it's basically doing it twice as much in that same event if it's power level 4. So this should fill it up twice as fast, basically.
Cool.
So let's see how this looks and affects gameplay. Okay. Oh, I did notice something funny, but I totally understand why. I've got the firepower, but the gauntlet character map is not appended.
Right.
But that's because we're cheating and we're at the start of the level. We're setting that variable to 3, and that can't happen in the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why that's happening. So it's no big deal. I'll bet it'll fix itself. Let's see, when I grab this one that's coming. Well, once I kill one more enemy. Once I kill one more humanoid enemy, I guess. There we go. Nice. All right, so that's the twice as fast. It was pretty snappy. Yeah, you could still spam the heck out of it.
That's true.
That's not bad.
I mean, I don't know. Do we want that? You know, because
Yeah, no,
I remember we
yeah.
worked hard to fix a lot of that, but
Yeah, but I mean, this is a case now with the special cloak that, let's see, and you do end up running out right there. So you can't
Yeah.
do it infinitely. So that is we'll have to see, like, where it'll really matter is we'll see if that really, really messes up, like, the boss fight. We obviously don't want it where you can just hang up in the air and spam the boss to death or something. So
Right.
long as that's not an issue, I don't think it'll be an issue. But obviously, it would be even more dangerous if it always stayed 100% full and you could spam the heck out of it.
Another thing unrelated to the power stuff is, I think I had mentioned this once before, but not in the videos. But you know, the way the jumping is, like we have that sort of tracking the player thing, but our level's not very tall.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if we need to do a special vertical movement for the camera piece that does like sort of based on the player's height off the ground, like it does sort of a smooth scroll, so
Right.
it doesn't do that jump and then jump back down when he hits the ground, you know?
Right. This is technically supposed to be smooth, but because like it's,
Right.
it's because there's so little scrolling that you
Right.
really see a very sudden change of many pixels in that extreme foreground layer.
Yeah, I mean,
And
it works
would
well
get
enough, but
fixed.
yeah,
if I increase the height of the level a bit, which should not be a problem, especially if it's only by enough pixels to really make it feel a lot smoother, that scroll.
Well, the only issue with that is it would follow him way higher, like,
Right.
and I'm not sure, like, do we like the idea that he still kind of goes up toward the top of the screen? Because that's really the issue. Like, I don't mind him going up that high
Right.
on the screen to kind of, so you can still get a good look at ground enemies and stuff who are around.
Right.
But it's more like it just needs that jump. Like when he's like a couple of tiles high, that jump back and forth really is kind of jarring visually.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree. I think it will only be a matter of adding maybe one more tile height to the screen, and maybe tweaking the code or adding a tiny bit of elasticity to the camera.
Yeah.
To the way it follows the player. I think a combination of those two things is going to be enough. But
Right.
we'll definitely make a note of that, and we'll make that one of the like last minute spit and polish things we do when the vertical slice is otherwise done. So getting back to what we want to do for this video, the next thing that makes really good sense to tackle is simply add the event checks that turn off the what I keep calling the particle effect, the magic effect on the gauntlet, turning that off when we don't want it. And it's
Right.
basically during any of the attacks, which is air bash, uppercut, and yeah, like I said, I shouldn't have to do it at all for die anyway. All right, so let's see. Stop this and go into gameplay events. And what variable would that be? Oh, we'll just look for gaunt power, I think, or something like that. Yep, gaunt power. All right, set invisible, set visible, set invisible. Okay, so we're just gonna need. We'll just copy this, and we're gonna replace this condition. And I don't know if you've ever seen this. Have you ever seen me turn an event into an or block before?
I
Or
believe
not?
so.
Oh, okay, good. Hero. And we're going to compare current animation. And luckily, this is why I like to keep the spriter file open. So we can do very specific, we can copy and paste to make sure that we have the exact name with the proper, whether or not it's capitalized and all that stuff. So we're going to make or block, copy and paste. And then, so now we're going to start adding in any of the other attack animations. Go ahead.
It wouldn't apply to any that don't have the point, though, right?
Well, it would, but it wouldn't know where to put it, so it would probably put it at 0, 0 on the screen.
Right.
Theoretically, I've never done this, but it might be possible to just check, does that point exist? And if so, set its position to that, and if not, hide it. But I don't know if you can check if a spriter object point exists. I don't know if that's even possible. So I'll just keep doing it this way. It's a little annoying right now, but we'll just likely go into chipmunk mode in the video. Yeah, this happens every tick right here.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as the animation is done and this isn't true, it'll fix it and make it visible again.
Right.
So this should have done the trick. So let's play again.
But it does have to wait till the animation's done, right?
Right,
I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's a good point. You might be right. Maybe it won't. I think this will work. Let's find out. We'll know in a moment. Oh, actually, yeah, no, it does. It turns off. We could see right here.
Yeah.
It's working. Yep, it's working.
I mean, a lot of times it's disappearing anyways because of the power level.
meter.
Yeah.
All right, hold on.
Oh yeah, because see,
it's there.
Yep.
But wait, is it supposed to be there? No, it's not. It's not supposed to. Okay, so it's not working. All right, and you are correct. It is because it's being set visible. And
So I guess.
Yep. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, of course. If we move this here,
Mm-hmm.
we're setting it visible here, but then it'll get set invisible again immediately if any of these animations are playing.
Right.
So I think just changing the order of those events fixed the problem. All right.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be playing during the uppercut, so
Yep, it's
Yeah,
not
yep.
there. All right.
nice.
That fixed it. Sweet.
Yeah, it adds that like the power's in his hand, and then it
Yeah.
kind of gets launched out,
Yeah,
and then it has to rebuild. Yeah, I like that.
Very nice. So the last thing I would like to get done for this video is to make it so that the music changes when you gain or lose the power.
Right.
So I've unmuted Chrome browser and I set the volume low, but that might mean Corey won't be able to hear me well while I'm testing, but it should not be a problem in the meantime while we're doing the code. So I'll just try not to say much when we're actually running the game to test if it's working. But anyway, so here's what we need to do. It's when we trigger the character map, which I'll just look for map again.
Yeah, because we will have that animation where he does that,
Yeah.
which would have made this, I guess, a little bit easier, but you know.
All right, so where is that? Power level is 4. All right, I think this will work. So let's try. This part is easy, bringing it back to the normal music, like when you lose the cloak, and that would simply be a matter of audio, and then stop, and we're stopping music, and then we are playing. Oh yeah, looping. Set looping to looping. Tag music. And this is going to be the regular music, which I gave a very mundane name, like, I can't remember what the name was. Normal, yeah. Normal music. And then, so I think what we need to do is add something that says limit once while true, trigger once while true. And then we're going to do the same thing, but instead of playing normal, we're going to play, I call it something mundane, I think power.
Right.
And this is going to be
Is that 0 decibel thing an issue, or is that...
No, believe it or not, this is the default, which means normal volume.
0 decibels.
And negative 10 is half volume. So I guess this makes sense to people that study sound and decibels, but it makes no sense to an average person.
Right.
All right, so like I would much rather it was just like from 0 to 100 representing percent of.
Yeah.
I guess the reason they do it, like, but even then, like, you could do 200 for twice as loud as normal, 200%. Like
Right.
there's, I don't like. I guess it makes sense to people who study the science of sound volumes and decibels, but yeah, I don't like it. It's counter.
Well,
It's
it's just the
unintuitive.
way that's written.
Yeah,
Playing it at 0 decibels is like that
at
sounds,
volume zero
that sounds
decibels,
wrong.
you would think.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would think that means dead silent.
Yep.
Okay, so power level equals 4, trigger once. So this should mean. Oh, you know what though? Power level equals 4, trigger once. I think that's enough. Stop regular music and then play power, which is the different song. All right. Theoretically, this is all we need, so let's see if this is working. That worked. Can you
Cool.
hear it, Corey? It did switch.
I can't hear it too well, but
Right.
I can tell it changed though.
Yep. Yeah, I have it set very low so we can hear each other talking in general and so that the viewers can hear it. But it
Right.
did work. Oh, and it did switch back. Okay, when I lost the cloak. Yep. Let me regain the cloak and make sure. Am I cutting out, Corey?
Uh, not a lot, no.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
All right, excellent. It's switching back and forth between the two songs perfectly. Of course, those aren't the final songs. Those are just some of those ones that are royalty free to use in YouTube videos, just so we could get the code working. I think that's a good place to stop for this video. We got a lot done, but we have a few things left over we're going to do, like make it freeze time when you finally get that power, or anytime you re-get it, and do probably the same animation, but we'll make it so that the gauntlet doesn't appear. So it'll be,
Yeah,
I guess, a
yeah.
variant of that animation with some other effect with the cloak coming on or something. And I think that's pretty much it. Oh, there is one other thing. A patron had a cool idea. Well, what happens when you grab another power orb after you've gotten the cloak, right?
right.
And he had a cool idea. Well, what if after that point you just make it so that basically it releases this burst of energy that hurts every enemy on screen, so it would like kill really basic enemies and hurt bosses or sub bosses quite a lot.
Oh yeah.
So that's a cool idea. The only other option I was thinking of was it would give you a health back if you were missing health
Right.
by one block, but that's less cool.
Or maybe
Yeah.
you know, and it gets more complicated if we do it this way too.
Right.
But maybe at that point, every orb is a health orb.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so you're just earning health even more frequently than you were before.
Right.
But at the same time, that might be not only overly complicated, but it might be too much
OP.
benefit to the player.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a cool idea, but I think you're right. Just as far as gameplay balance and wanting to keep that sense of I gotta think strategically, I've got to think about what I'm doing. I think it's worth it to just have it do that, like any enemy on screen. And we can even do a cool thing where we trigger a particle effect at every enemy that'll be specific to that magic in that level. So like
Yeah.
everyone will get an electric burst shock in level 2. All that stuff. It'll be one of the unique particle effects for that particular level, and we could flash the whole screen a color and
Yeah.
make that happen when you grab it, which will be really cool. So, great idea, patron. I'll when I'm editing this video, I'll put in the name of the patron that suggested that idea. But yeah, and I think those are the only things we need left to do to wrap up the new power up system. Is make it play that animation when you get it, and like pause time and play that animation, and add that bit where once you're at power 4 and you collect one, just do it like a whole screen energy bomb thing that hurts every enemy on screen. But
Cool.
so that'll be in an upcoming video, and another video eventually we will add the pause menu, which is a less exciting video. So maybe I'll make that a short one and just sort of make it all work while not recording, and then explain how it works in a short video. But anyway, thanks as always, patrons, and thanks everyone for watching, and stay tuned for the next update.
If you enjoy our content and want to keep up to date on our games, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, if you want to support our projects, consider becoming a patron. The link's in the description, and we'll see you soon.